All right, I want to show you how to simplify a large data set today. So this is data we took from a class lab. We had kind of 3 experiments going on within one experiment, which was our activity of our potato enzyme at different pHs, different water temperatures, and different concentrations. Now this is the data from the form, so I'm going to take this, and by clicking that box I can highlight everything. Control A also works, but I'm going to copy and I'm going to move that into Excel so that you can see how this works in Excel. So just pasting in that first box, and that's a little annoying, so I'm going to widen that and resize. Double clicking on that line allows you to resize. And let's zoom in a bit so that you can see what I'm doing. So the first thing I want to do is highlight everything again, and I want to set up a filter. So by clicking that button and hitting filter, I've brought up these arrows, and that's going to allow me to sort alphabetically or pull out specific types of data. For example, if I just want to look at 4 and 10 because those were some variables in our study, I don't need 4 and 10 because I actually just want to look at places where the concentration varied and pH was 7. So I'm going to highlight those rows and right click and delete the row. Now it looks like all my data is gone, but if I put 7 back, there's the rest of my data, and now it's all 7. I want to do the same thing with water temperature, get rid of everything that's not 22 degrees, but now I'm going to use the filter as a sorting tool and just show you how you can just highlight only the rows that are 10 degrees and delete them. This is a little bit easier without quite so much zoom. I'm scrolling down. You could be using a page down feature. Get all the 37s. Delete those rows as well. So now everything is pH of 7 and water temperature of 22, so technically I don't need these columns anymore, and so I can highlight, right click, and delete those columns. If you don't right click, if you just highlight and hit delete, it'll leave the row but remove the information. I'm going to undo that because the concentration is the information I want. I'm going to sort that smallest to largest. We have an issue here. First of all, at some point I changed the form to read percents, but before that it was written in the old style with number of chads. So 1 chad was equal to 25%. So I can add that, click and drag, and fill over all those ones with 25%. So let me show you that again. 2 chads should be 50%. If I hover over that little green box, it changes the cursor and allows me to copy down. It'll copy down patterns. If you have a pattern like 105, 110, and you highlight those cells and then click and drag, it'll fill that pattern down for you. It's a really, really handy tool to highlight, click, and drag. And then I believe one of these comments mentioned the actual number of chads we used was 3, so we need to change that to 75%. And that is the only comment that relates to concentration, so I'm going to go ahead and delete these comments, and I'm going to resort smallest to largest. So now all my 25s are together, all my 50s, all my 75s, all 3 of them, and my 100s. So, and there should be a lot of those because that was the control group for other classes as well. So now I actually want to use, instead of all of these numbers as I do my analysis, I want to look at the rate of oxygen produced in that 5-minute time period. So maybe the rate did slow down some. I might not be getting the peak rate, but when you summarize information, you lose some of your information. That's just the way it works. So rate is milliliters of oxygen produced per minute. So we're going to set up a formula to calculate this for us. This was 5 minutes. Milliliters per minute just means that it's this number divided by 5. So an equal sign sets up a formula. So it's going to do a calculation for you. So I want it to say this cell divided by 5, and when I hit enter, it will do that calculation. And as I click and drag that down, it continues to look at, see, M13, the cell beside it, that's 13, and do all those calculations for us in one go. So nice, so easy. So now we have all of our rates. Now, if I were to delete the information out of this column, you'd see a bunch of zeros because it's basing its numbers only off of the numbers in that column. So to be able to move these values, do things with these values, copy and paste them to other places, you need to do one thing now. And that is to copy all the data and then paste special. You want to paste values only, and that's this option. So now, instead of being based off an equals sign, you're seeing actual numbers. So now when I delete this information, nothing happens to my rate, which is excellent because now I just want to look at rate and concentration. So I'm going to delete all these rows away. And you can hide them as well, but I have a backup copy on Google Spreadsheets. I'm just going to delete everything. All right, so here we are. Now, there are programs that love to work with data that's set up where the IV is in one column and the DV is in another column, but I find that we are much more used to looking at data that is organized by IV treatment groups. So 25, 50, let me show you how the click and drag pattern works, 75 and 100. So I'm going to take this information, copy it over. Now there are different numbers of trials based on the different teams that did this data collection. Some got more done than others. And all our 100s. And I'm seeing a lot of variation in those different 100 groups. And there's a lot of them. Now, so that's all in columns K through N. So in column J, way down here, now I want to find the average and standard deviation and number of trials. And let's actually make this wrap so that we can see all those words. So there is a formula for average. You don't have to work the formula. You just start to type the word average and click it and highlight all the cells you want to average. Excel is made to only work with the cells that have numbers in them. And I've got a little green arrow. Yep, formula omits adjacent cells. And we're going to carry that over so that we've got averages. Those averages look very similar, and 25% looks to have the highest rate. So the data doesn't make a lot of sense, but that is our data. This lab is notoriously hard to get consistent. For standard deviation, you have all these different standard deviation of a population, of a sample. We're going to do the sample, because these were samples. And again, we'll highlight all the potential values. Click enter. So now we've got our standard deviation. So you can see with that high average, we also have a very large variation. A few groups were really high for that 25%. And so that data is skewed. And then number of trials, this is one of my favorites. We can count So counts the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. That's what we want. And we'll click and drag. So 10, 10, 3, and 33. So now we have our number of trials, our averages, our standard deviations. This is the information you'd need to be able to fill in the basics of the descriptive statistics data table that we're going to teach you to format next. Thanks for watching.